No one leaves. This awesome story is written by Corpse Child. He now has numerous books available. Be sure to check them out. You can find them at Amazon and at his own website store. The links are listed below in the description. So grab your coffee, sit back, and enjoy the show. The car pulled into the parking lot, squealing to a halt. Trista's head was thrown back so as to slam against the headrest. She groaned. Beside her, the driver turned and gave her his icy glare. "You make so much as a single peep or move even one fucking muscle." He flashed the stock of his .09mm. "Capiche?" She frantically nodded. Unsatisfied, he grabbed her by her throat and yanked her close. "Capiche?" Yes, sir." He threw her back into her seat and got out of the car. Slamming the door behind himself, he walked up to the front door of the decrepit house. He took a moment to survey the area and half grinned. The place was choked off on all sides by trees, completely isolated. Exactly the right place for this, he thought to himself. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out his phone and dialed the first contact on his list and put it on speaker. "Callisto!" he shouted into the receiver not even a second after the call connected. For a moment, all was silent on the other end before a voice responded. "Vance, about damn time. Christ, so much for Record Tim." Yeah, look, I got the girl and I'm at the pickup spot. Where the hell are you?" "About to pack my stuff and head over to where you are." "You haven't even left yet?" "I was waiting for you to call." Vance rolled his eyes. "No sense in getting all the way out in the sticks if you weren't going to be there, you know. I love how you talk to me like I'm not your best guy for shit like this. And I love how you talk like you haven't left me hanging before." For a moment, an awkward silence choked the air on both ends. Sure, if he wanted to, Vance could have made an argument. Probably something along the lines of having to actually hunt the previous targets, not just nab them off the sidewalk on their walk home from school like this one. But what was the point? Finally, the silence broke with Vance asking, "All right, whatever. How long till you get here? I don't want to be babysitting all fucking day out here." "Oh, and here I thought you were a family man, Vance," Callisto replied with a donkey laugh. Vance gritted his teeth. God, how good it would feel to swing his size 13S up that suit monkey's pompous albino ass. Instead, he growled loud enough for it to be heard on the other end. "Oh, relax, you grumpy bum. I'll be there in an hour and a half. You'll be all right till then." Vance grunted into the receiver again. "Look, if I throw a small bonus in, will that make you happy?" "Whatever, just get here." "On my way, you big baby." Vance hung up the phone after that. His fingers tightened around his phone. It was everything he could do not to just up and huck the damn thing across the yard at one of the trees. He closed his eyes and inhaled. "Cool it, Vance." He said he was on his way. An hour and a half, that's all. He looked back at the car. Trista looked back through the windshield with an anxious, as well as an exhausted stare. An hour and a half. He turned and opened the front door of the house, keeping one hand on the stock of his .09mm in case he'd need to do a quick clean sweep. He peered in from the crack in the doorway. No one in the living room. He stepped all the way in then and started making his way to the kitchen. No one there either. He went back into the living room and paused. He probably would have gone right back out to get Trista if he hadn't just heard what sounded like the creaking of wood from underneath him. He jerked around to the other end of the room where the sound came from, drawing the gun. He couldn't see anything, so he stepped slowly toward the corner of the room. The sound was faint, but present nonetheless. Faint pitter-patter scampered across the floor, seemingly in place. Vance raised the barrel of the gun to the corner of the room. The scampering picked up for a moment. Vance's hand shook a bit. His finger began to coil around the trigger. Just when it looked like he was about to pull all the way, turning who or whatever the fuck was there into Swiss cheese, the room went silent again. Vance's arm remained rigid for a moment longer, registering the shift in tone before finally relaxing. Once more he closed his eyes and sighed. Calm down. The place is just settling. It's old as hell, does that sometimes. He holstered his weapon and walked back to the front door. He was definitely gonna need that bonus for a couple nights of drinks after this. Opening the car door, Vance jerked Trista roughly by her arm out of the car. "Go on, get in the house and find a place to park your ass." She silently nodded and complied. She speed-walked to the front door as quickly as she could, but not quickly enough for Vance. "Get a move on, bitch. I'm already low on patience as it is." Vance gave a hard shove to her back that sent her hurtling into the house. She landed face first onto the old wooden floor. He slammed the door behind her before stomping off toward the kitchen. She could hear him grumbling something, no telling as to what. Not that it really mattered, did it? She slowly started moving her head to look upward. Aside from the fact that her body ached, she wasn't sure trying to get up was a good move at all. He did say not to move or say a word, didn't he? So instead, she simply kept looking forward at the kitchen until her neck ached from hypertension, forcing her to plant her nose back into the floor. The floor, she decided, was comfortable enough for the time being. How long it would stay this way, or how long he'd make her stay this way, who the hell knew? In the kitchen, Vance pulled out a pack of his Newport Reds and lit one. That drag almost instantly calmed him. At least it made his body a lot less shaky. He might actually stand to babysit for the next hour or so after all, given the bitch didn't jump stupid and try and, run off or something. He looked outside through the kitchen window. Almost right up against the glass were a horde of trees, all of which were packed so close together they might as well be sardines in a can. He snickered. Running away? As if, where the fuck's she gonna go? His neck snapped to his right. There it was again, in the corner of the kitchen, the scampering noise. He frowned and narrowed his eyes at it. It was just a corner. Dark, empty corner. The only thing occupying space there were cobwebs and a dust bunny or two. Except then, what in the hell was making that noise? Just the house steadily.
No one leaves.
Vance's heart jumped from his chest to his throat before freezing. The voice, assuming it was that which he'd just heard, sounded to him like what you'd get if you crossed the hiss of a snake, a person trying to speak with their dying breath, and the whistle of a tea kettle all into one throat. Such noises Vance had never heard before outside maybe a movie he'd seen or two. Already his hand wrapped around the stock of his .09mm, itching to draw it again. He stayed his hand, however. The noise had stopped again. Like before, he stared for about a minute before wiping his eyes, sighing, and going back to dragging on his Newport. Maybe he'd need to just use that bonus to buy out the bar for a night or two. Shit was getting a bit too whacked for him. He pulled out his phone. "Only 15 minutes so far?" He scoffed. "Great, and I'll bet he's still gonna be late, probably hitting every drive-through on the way." Fat ass. The pattering came again. This time it wasn't in the kitchen itself. He went out into the hallway. Peering out, there wasn't anyone in the hallway, yet the noise seemed to echo off the dark, dingy-looking walls. He came out to about the middle of the hallway and called out, "Hey, you little slut, what are you doing out there? Didn't I tell you to park your ass?" No reply came from the living room. None, except for the pattering. "God damn it, just can't sit still, can you, bitch?" He began stomping down the hall, balling his fist as tight as he could. Oh, how good it'd feel to throttle her, he thought. Boss said she had to be alive, not unharmed. Nothing like a little stress relief.
No one leaves.
He stopped again. "What did you say to me?" Again, no answer. "Hey, I know you can hear me." Nothing. Now his patience was dangerously thin. Obviously, Vance was already a time bomb with a short fuse by default. Now some mousy little schoolgirl was trying to fuck around with him? Oh, but no, little lady was about to find out. Hard. His stomping quickly morphed into an elephantine sprinting down the hallway. His teeth clenched. He felt like he did back in high school in the weight room. Full of adrenaline, full of rage, and void of any logic or reasoning. "You better answer me, bitch," he shouted. His voice echoed off the walls, yet even this was drowned out only a few seconds later under the scampering. He stopped then. What before sounded like soft pitter-patter of mice or rats now got to be heavier and heavier, like from either someone with really large feet or something the size of a grizzly bear.
No one leaves.
Hey, knock it off! The scampering got closer. He stepped backward almost unconsciously. He was about to reach for the third time that day for his gun when his blood froze solid in his body.
We demand blood.
The fuck? He just about voiced this out loud until an ear-splitting shriek came from up ahead of him. He dropped to his knees and covered his ears. Even this, though, did next to nothing to actually block out the noise, only slightly muffling it, if that. When he opened his eyes about 5 seconds later, he found himself at the end of the hallway. Trista was face down on the floor where he'd left her a minute ago. Immediately, he picked himself up and stomped over to her. "So you want to play fucking games, huh?" he shouted. Trista had just time to look up at him before he had her snatched off the floor by her hair. She yelped in pain, which earned her 2 sharp slaps across her lips. "What did I tell you? Not a fucking peep." He threw her against the wall. Her body ricocheted like a BB pellet from one wall to another. He quickly stomped over and hemmed her to the wall, pressing the barrel of the .09 mil against her right temple. For a second, Vance said nothing, letting his seething, rage-heated breath sting the young girl's face. "Now this is gonna go one of 2 ways, you hear?" She said nothing, replying only with her wide, frightened eyes. He drew her back and slammed her against the wall a second time. "You hear?" he shouted. "Yes," she cried. "You're either gonna sit and be a good little girl while the boss man gets here so I can collect my fat check, or I can paint this fucking room with the inside of your head and I'll be on my merry fucking way. Now which is it gonna be, huh?" Trista tried fidgeting against him. "You're hurting me," she wailed. "Oh, I'm hurting you?" he mocked, hitting her across the cheek with the barrel of the gun. "How's that, huh? That enough blood for you?" Trista fell to the floor. Vance yanked her up by her hair and slammed her back against the wall. "Answer me!" I don't know what you're... "Don't lie to me, bitch," he shouted, taking another swing across her face. Before she could fall again, he caught her and straightened her against the wall. Her lips were busted wide open and there was now a nasty gash running the length of her cheekbone. I'm telling the truth," she cried. Her right eye drooped, just barely able to stay open, yet opened enough to expose the fear in it. "Oh, sure you are." He slammed her into the wall again and released her, letting her crumple to the floor before stomping off. On the floor, Trista wheezed while cradling her stomach. Vance was reaching into his pocket for his phone, about to blow Callisto's phone up again, when the heavy pattering noise kicked up again from behind him. He snapped back around to be met with Trista, writhing in agony on the floor. He started stomping back toward her and she cringed. He stopped again when he heard the pattering coming from in front of him where Trista was. Vance's eyes widened. "What the fu-"
No one leaves.
He drew his gun and aimed it in front of himself. "What do you want?" He began waving the weapon from side to side, corresponding with the movements of the pattering noises.
We demand blood.
The steps were right on top of him now. He could feel an invisible giant breathing heavily down onto him, suffocating him. He raised the gun high and was about to squeeze the trigger when he felt the same kind of presence coming from behind him as well. He wanted to turn and look, but for some reason he felt as though he were being held in a vice on both shoulders.
Blood.
The voices screeched, shattering his eardrums.
We need blood.
All of a sudden, Vance felt his arms being jerked by unseen hands. "What the hell? Let me go!" He struggled frantically to no effect. His arms began turning the gun away from the wall and back toward himself.
No one leaves until we have blood.
Vance's eyes for a moment mirrored Trista's, wide and fearful, before then closing forever, with a flash of the barrel being the last thing he'd ever see. His body collapsed hard to the floor. In seconds, a crimson pool begins forming around his head and body. Trista, uncovering her head, realizing she wasn't the one being shot, saw in shock the body of her captor, her abuser, dead on the ground. She stood up then and walked over to the window. Looking out, she found a car just pulling into the driveway alongside Vance's. Finally, she thought. She walked for a moment over to Vance's body and stooped down, smearing her fingers in his blood before getting up and walking over to the front door and turning the knob. Outside, she caught the visitor right as he was getting out of his car. "About time, Dad," Trista called out, making it clear in her tone that she was less than amused. "In my defense, sweetie pie, I really didn't think he'd actually go through with it." He laughed and added, "Hell, if I did, I'd have kept his ass around, wouldn't I?" Trista rolled her eyes. "You okay? He didn't hurt you too bad, did he?" "No, just a couple cuts, that's all." "Well, judging from the red hands there," he pointed at her palms and winked, "I see the plan worked." "Oh yeah, sure did. Just next time, Dad. If you're looking to feed your rejects to the house like that, please don't use me as bait. Baby doll, you know I wouldn't have let him actually hurt you. Besides which, I knew the house wouldn't have either." He winked, kissed her on her forehead, and led her back to his car. "Mama's house won't ever let any harm come to the family like that. That's why it's perfect for getting rid of him." He laughed again and added, "No one leaves. Mama's house." Hey family, a very big thank you to Corpse Child for allowing me to narrate such an awesome tale. Be sure to check out their Reddit profile and sub for more of their awesome works. Don't forget to check out his books, links are below. If you would like to support us and make a donation, I'd be very much appreciative. I do have PayPal and a Buy Me a Coffee account. Be sure to also check out our merch store. There are plenty of items and designs to choose from. If you enjoyed this video, then why not check out the next one, here, on the right-hand side. You can also follow us. All my socials and all my other links are contained within the Linktree link below. Take care, everyone, and I hope you all have a wonderful and peaceful night. And don't forget,